Hello, America. My name is Jay, and happy Veterans Yesterday. That's right, I said yesterday. Because the reason why we even have Veterans Day to enjoy off of school or work is because of the veterans who were of yesterday and their work, and many yesterdays before. And that's the idea. I wanted to talk to veterans and understand the work and what it meant and all the details. Now, throughout the year, we have holidays, but we can't really talk to those who made it possible. Like on July 4th, our founders are all gone, right? And Dr. King, he's out here sadly, and he can't talk to us about his day. And of course, President's Day, we have some still around, but I can't give them a text or give them a call. I mean, they can call me. Happy to hear that call from them. But Veterans Day is different. We have them around. We can talk to them. And that's the idea. I have veterans in my own family that I would love to talk to and understand more. And I want to kick that off here with talking to my own father. I call him Dad. And his name is Jerome Roy the First. And he can come on right now. All right. This is going to be great. Hey, Dad.
Hey.
All right, so.
How you doing?
Good. So here's the idea. I sadly, if someone sat down with me and said, hey, so tell me about your dad and his service to our country, and I would know some things, but I wouldn't know all I should know, shamefully for my part. That's the idea. You know, you're telling me the details that I should know as your son and even everybody else. So that's the idea. So let's start things off with this. What was the branch of service you were in, and then the details of the duties that you had to uphold?
Well, the branch I was in was the United States Navy, which I proudly served for 20 years, almost to the day. And I was in communications. My title was radioman first class. And the duties were varied because communications in the military is different than communications on the outside. In your average world, communications deals with television, radio, other means of media. In the military, we deal strictly with point-to-point communications. We communicate mostly through setting up the equipment. My job was to make sure that all of the equipment that was required was set up properly. And we use systems. So we had a systems coordinator, which is basically what I did in the latter part. The early part, I worked in the communications center, making sure that the messages got out. We had to type up messages, we had to receive messages. And my first job basically was in, back then we used the Morse code. So a lot of our communications were dealt with dits and dots, or dots and dashes, however you want to call them. So if I had to communicate, I'd listen to this, did it, did. And you sit there for hours and hours and hours. But you had to go to school for that. So I went to school for 3 months to learn how to use Morse code and to type. So you have to, one of the things you have to learn how to type 33 words a minute, which fortunately when I was in high school, I did take typing, and I was up to that speed already. But getting into communications back then, when I went in 1962, was very hard because there were very few blacks in that field. And I don't know whether they thought that we were smart enough or not, but it was hard getting in. There was a lot of discrimination in the military. Basically, they wanted us to be cooks and stewards. Stewards were the ones who served the officers. Or maybe on the deck force, which is where I started at, being what we call a deck seaman. And I worked very hard, and it was hard getting out of there until we had somebody that came along, understood the need and all of the fact that blacks were also smart enough to be in that field.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk to. We're going to have to share this as well, back and forth here. But when it comes to work and people's goals and really just making things happen, the words blood, sweat, and tears are that common theme, which I want to kind of center this around. When it comes to blood, it's not just the shedding of it, of course, that's serious stuff, and we recognize that as well. But there's also, the blood is like the life, what keeps us going in our bodies. So in connecting to this here, when it comes to the blood of what you did, what was perhaps kept you going? Maybe you had some tough times, but nevertheless you had a focus, something drove you, you were driven. But what was that passion, perhaps, that kept you in this mindset?
Well, I knew that I was good enough. So I kept at it and I kept at it. Whatever job they gave me, I made sure that I did it to the best of my ability. And one day I put in, we had another chief came aboard, so I put in for it again. And this time I got selected, and the captain of the ship, whose area that I took care of, said he knew that I wasn't going to be down there long. He realized that I had the drive and I had the, I guess you say, the intelligence to be in that field. So it wasn't nothing he could do until I actually put in for it and he approved it. And once I got in, I showed him that I knew how to do the work. But I just had to keep on pushing because they say there were very few blacks in the field. Then we had one guy came aboard the ship who got in through the school. But as far as those that were on the ship, they were having a rough time. Every time we put in for it, some would say the white guy got it. Yeah. But I knew I could do it when I went through boot camp. I took all the basic battery tests and I passed them all. So if you pass all of those, then they have other exams. Well, I guess I passed all of them with top scores, and they looked at me like, black folks ain't supposed to be that smart. But I showed them that we were. And so they recommended me for communications when I left boot camp. But when I got to the ship, the people who in charge had a different mindset. Mindset being white people supposed to be in this communication center. But I decided I'm going to be there, and I just kept pushing until I got it.
You made a decision, and it was based a lot on the fact that you knew what you could do, and there were the others who looked at your potential, right?
Right.
And also you wanted to make a point that, as a black person, change that mindset. You can get things done just as well. Perhaps it's not better, right?
Right. And what they did was they sent me and two other white guys who also put in for it. So we all went to the same school in Japan, which was a code school. And all day long, all you did was sit and listen to code, type, listen to code, and learn procedures. Well, when the final analysis, my score, well, actually not my score, but my words per minute exceeded theirs. Because you had to have 18 words a minute in order to graduate from school. And I had 18 plus. And I was good at it. Yeah. Well, actually, I was exceptionally good at it.
And nothing wrong with knowing that you are great at something. And that's good to hear, especially as a son from his father, just amazing skills that you had and still have.
Yeah, well, even now, I still know Morse code. But that's what they call an iron horse, because everything now is digital. I don't think anybody except a lot of your merchants know the code anymore, because they don't really teach it in communication school. You go to school now, everything is push button. You don't use a key anymore. I don't even know if there's any around. I don't even know where mine is. I used to have a Morse code key that I could play with, and I used to play with it. But it's been years. I've been out of the military for over 30 years, so I have no idea where it is. And I don't even know if you can find one.
So, and this all started, when you in getting involved in the service. What was the year, the date? Recall the date of everything, how everything started and kicked off for you?
Yeah, well, August 12, 1962. And I graduated from high school in 1961, May 29th.
Now, August 12th just happened to be my birthday, 1977. And I can think about, too, when we were on the naval base. I mean, I have some fond memories of that. I had my own military card, right? Also, too, I had the chance to go to the commissary there. And I remember also, too, the area where you had your car, and you work on your car there as well. Right. And also, too, the Burger King. Oh, I love the Burger King on the base. I can still taste the Whoppers. I haven't had a Whopper in years, but I don't have to because I remember the taste of that Whopper. I mean, so naval base was very helpful to me growing up.
Yeah. Right. Well, also, the naval base is one of the places where you first learn how to play basketball. Yeah. And I took you, Ishman, and Antoine, and you guys played against guys that were maybe 20 years older than you were. But because of the skills that you had, the practices that we did prior to you getting on the court, you were able to compete with them and also to frustrate them.
Yeah. We learned so much there. By the way, those two guys there are friends of mine from school, also a family as well. We discussed about the blood that goes into the passion, the life which drove you. Also, too, you mentioned the work and everything, and that involves the sweat as well. When it comes to sweat, you can sweat literally, but also, too, perhaps the anxiety or the concern or the worries when you were serving. Anything that concerned you, that worried you, that maybe some nights caused you some anxiety.
Well, no, because I was good at my job. I studied hard. I studied the equipment, and I had a lot of help. Everywhere I went, there was somebody always willing to help me to improve on the skills that I already had. I went aboard one of the ships I went aboard, Delta. The guy who was teaching me how to use the equipment apparently did not want me to get better than he was. He was a white guy. But then one day while I was tuning this equipment, the chief walked in, also white. He said, "Who taught you how to do that?" And I explained it to him. He said, "Well, wait a minute, let me show you a different way." So he showed me a quicker way to do the same job. And at that point, I knew that everything had a shortcut, and you could use the shortcuts to accomplish the same goals, get the same results. So everywhere I went, I used that. Matter of fact, when I was a teenager, went to work for a lady and to help to clean up some stuff in the yard. And I was trying to stretch the time out to make sure I made the maximum amount of money. So she told me, she says, "I'm going to pay you the same amount no matter how long it takes." And she explained to me, she said, "Whatever you do, always find an easier way to do the same job." And that followed me all into my Navy career. So everywhere that I went, I always looked for a better way to get the same job done, and also faster, which in the military is really crucial, especially if you have to go to what we call general quarters in the event of an emergency. You have to be able to get dressed quick. You have to get to your whatever station you're on. You have to be there quick. So in doing so, I learned all the shortcuts on how to get all that done. One of the great highlights, we were aboard ship, and we have what they call a Gibson girl. These were emergency communication equipment that was packed a certain way in this little bag, so that if you were out on the ship, then you had emergency communications equipment. Well, I took it apart, and I couldn't put it back together.
Okay, all right.
So what I had to do was take another one apart. Yeah, I'm being smart this night today. So
Very important.
I took another one apart, and then so while I took it out, I said, "Well, I might as well test it," because I was testing the other one. And then I found out, okay, this thing was complicated. I had all this stuff in this little bitty bag. So I managed to take it out and then put them all back. So while I was doing it, I took them all out and tested every last one of them and put a tag on them. Well, fortunately, within the week, we had what they call the IG, or Inspector General, come aboard. And the first thing they did was they went straight to the Gibson girls and looked and noticed that they'd all been recently tagged and tested. And that saved us, because nobody ever thought about testing them. Well, when you work round the clock in the nighttime, you find things that make you stay awake. And that was one of the things that I did. I tested all the Gibson girls. Next day, well, when the inspectors came in and found it out, so the chief came and said, "Look, you saved us. You can take off for the rest of the day."
Oh, see, there we go. And see here we are off on Veterans Day. I'm hearing that so far that veterans, like yourself, you have to work hard, you have to be humble and accept help from somebody else if you're going to get where you want to go. Right. And also, too, perhaps go the extra mile, understand, okay, we can go this way, or let's try a different method, and then get good at that as well. Yes.
Yeah, well, in the military, there are shortcuts, but you still have to stay within the regulations.
Sure.
Because in communications, it was one of those fields where you could mess up and you could end up in jail somewhere. And I wasn't going to jail for anything. I ain't like visiting people at jail. So we had to stay within guidelines. We had to work with what we call Department of Defense regulations. So every communication system changes every 24 hours. So if a 24-hour period, depending on what time they set it, it may be midnight, it may be 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, or it may be in the afternoon. But every system changes every 24 hours. And what that does is keep from having a compromise. See? So, and then system, they all had certain sequences that you had to follow in order to change the equipment. Some of them had cards, some of them had codes, but they all had to be changed every 24 hours. I mean, exactly. You could not deviate 1 minute this way or 1 minute that way, whatever the time was. And you had to listen for your time tick that was set up. And when it hit beep, you had to punch the button and everything changes. And this was throughout all military services because we communicated with Air Force, Army, Marines. We communicated with everybody. So we had to be right on the money. So when they change, we change.
And that right there is your sweat. For me, that just caused me so much anxiety and worry because what my duties are affect others as well. So you got to be on. You gotta be, like you said, you got to be quick. You must know what you're doing. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and the thing is that it's for protection because if we didn't change the codes, we could blow up one of our own ships because when we set up the equipment, that equipment sends a signal. So if we send out a missile, then that missile tunes into that frequency. Well, if the ship, let's say one of our ships forget to change their codes, well, that bomb, that missile is looking for a ship that does not have that protection. So effectively, if I forgot to change the code, I could be blown up.
Serious stuff. Yes.
Yeah. So you could end up with a lot of people being hurt, a lot of people being killed, and then of course you being court-martialed because you were on duty and you didn't change the code.
I'm learning so much here, and I mean, and that's why it's so important to understand the kind of work you guys you had to do because it not only affects you, but it affects others as well. I mean, we're learning a lesson here, from blood, from the sweat. Also, too, when it comes to tears, I was thinking that everything has their highs and their lows, and when it comes to tears, not just tears of sadness, but tears of joy. I was wondering when it comes to your service and your years there, whether there's some high points and some low points. What was some maybe a high, or let's start with maybe a high point that made you think this is amazing? I can't believe that I get a chance to be a part of all this.
Well, one of the high points was when I went to USS Nimitz, which was one of the most modern ships that was ever built at that time.
Yeah, I recall being on that ship, right? I was a little kid, and I out on the inside.
Right, you were inside. I have pictures of you in our living quarters.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know if we still have those somewhere. Maybe we can show them. You still have them? Well, this is great. So I got to now go see these pictures. Well, anyway, yes.
Yeah, and when I checked the board, I'm so used to the other type of equipment that when I got to the Nimitz, everything they had was all digital. Everything new, just push button. It's a communicator's dream. And so when I got there, they said, "Oh, well, this don't work." And that was a sad feeling. So the first time I had a midnight watch, the midwatch we call it, I broke out the manuals for all of this equipment and started reading them. So, and then start testing everything. So when the morning rolled around and the day shift came on and all of the heavies, and I gave them a test, gave them the paper showing that all this equipment worked. Nobody read the manual.
It's very common even today.
Yeah, when I break stuff out of the box and I want to put together, one of the things is I don't read the manual. Yeah, until I run into a snag, then I say, "Oh, well, now it's time to go and pull out the instructions to make sure that I get it right."
Yeah, so we can't blame anybody else. We don't read the instructions or directions, and they're everywhere. So that's a lesson that I have to learn myself.
Well, then that was one of the highlights, getting all of that equipment to work and seeing the faces on all of the people who were actually outranked me or who had been there working on as long as the ship been there. I mean, how could you overlook something that simple as reading the manual and making stuff work? You know, and so you push a button, and now you got all this beautiful equipment just connecting, and it's easy to communicate. And then after the product of the image, though, I was in Italy, which is where you were born.
That's right. Nice little keynote right there.
You were born in Naples, Italy, and there was where I had learned how to communicate in Italian because of the NATO base. All of your services were there, including some of the foreign services. So if we had to go by landline, we had to communicate with the Italians. So I had to learn to speak some Italian in order to get things done, yeah, which was quite a challenge. Yeah, and one of the things that was good about the Italians, if you made friends with one of them, you were friends for life. Yeah, so there was some good memories there, where we lived in Pineta Mare. We lived in a high rise, which was right on the beach.
Now, you still know some Italian words? You want to say a little message in Italian, or it's been a long time?
That's been a while. We left Italy in, I think it was 1970, 75 or somewhere in there, 78, somewhere in there. I left in 78, I think, because I went to the Nimitz. And we went to the Nimitz, and you went to California. You and your mother went to California until we got settled. And then you guys came back. But what happened, the Nimitz, when we were in Italy, they had the Iranian crisis. That's when they captured the hostages at the Iranian embassy. And so they pulled the ship out, and we left on New Year's Day. Never forget it. We left the harbor, and we left heading for the Indian Ocean. So we had to go all the way around Australia, around the Horn, we call it, and come up into the Indian Ocean. Mm-hmm. And then we had a task force come aboard, and then we dispatched the task force from the Nimitz to go get the hostages back. Well, needless to say, everybody knows that it got bombed, and it didn't happen. Yeah. But we spent 144 days at sea from the time we left to the time we got back to Norfolk, Virginia. 144 days had passed by. Wow. Yeah, so, but we had a good time at sea. One of the things, because of my communication skill, the Morse code, and being able to still operate the old equipment, my job was to helicopter from the Nimitz to the other ships to make sure that they were in compliance with their communications. Had to help make sure that they could still do the HF, that their Morse code equipment still worked.
Now, makes sense. Now, let's get real here too. Is there a low point, maybe something that happened that, was this hit you hard, some sadness going on for yourself or somebody else that you were around?
Well, the low point was that every time I took the test for chief, I passed it with flying colors. In other words, I was maybe 20 points or more above the cutoff. My evaluation was always 4.0, which is the best you can get. Yes. But each time the results would come back that I didn't make chief. So one of the days I decided, well, let me call a bureau and see what's going on. Because I had people working for me, had a guy come aboard was working, making chief, but because of his not being able to handle what we call the control center, then they had him working for me. He was making chief and warrant officer at the same time. And so he was working, we had him doing publication changes. Now that's kind of a low point for a person who's making chief. And so I called the bureau to find out what's going on here. They started saying, well, we're looking for people who have these qualifications, community involvement, and it's just so happened the guy who was coming aboard, he was involved with Chamber of Commerce, he was Boy Scout leader, his wife was Cub Scout leader, all kind of stuff. So I explained to them, say, well, those people don't make good leaders. I'm on a ship. With shipboard communications, it's different. And they say, well, that's what they were looking for. I said, okay, thank you, and I hung up. And at that point, I decided it was time for me to get off of there. So I got myself transferred to San Diego, to a new ship that was under construction. And so we got the ship in commission, and I'm ready to retire. And I took the chief test again, passed it. This time they said, "Oh, by the way, you're making chief." I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, with all these years you didn't give it to me, I'm ready to get out of here." And so we started making a bargain. The guy said, I said, "Well, here's what I want you to do." He said, "Well, I tell you what, in 3 days I'll call you back and we'll see." So in 3 days, the guy from D.C. called me back, and he said, "We don't have anything where you want to go." He said, "But we can send you to Monterey." Now, Monterey, California, to me was a beautiful place, but it's not where I wanted to be. So I told him goodbye, and I left.
Big decision there. I mean, that's real stuff. I mean, you want a certain position at some point. You get turned down for whatever reason, and then but you have to make a big decision when the time comes again. It's very, very important.
Well, my decision to get out was based on the fact that my 20 years work, and I had made up my mind when I went in, I was going to do 20 years. Okay. And that was it. No more, no less. And that's exactly what I did. I did my 20 and got out. On the day that I got out was the day that Luella, who had to be your sister, and graduated from high school. Yeah, so I got on the plane for Texas. I was there when she graduated. I was taking pictures when she walked across the stage. And that's a highlight.
Big highlight. And so veterans, and they're working hard, being humble, listen to somebody else, teach you something, find different directions, and of course, certain priorities you got to put in order and consider other people's feelings. So that's something that's a good lesson. All that being said, as a veteran, and this is a day that we recognize what you've done, but also too what you guys are what you're doing. Any thoughts about our country as far as from a veteran point of view, destinations, future directions, an advice from a veteran to anyone who's listening who could make those decisions happen?
Well, when I worked for the employment office, one of the things I tried to do was to steer young men coming out of high school who didn't have any direction to go into the military. And the selling point was that in the military, and I would ask them the question, do you know of anybody who is going to clothe you, house you, feed you, educate you, and then pay you to do for all of that stuff? And they couldn't think of nobody. The parents not going to do it. I said, well, why not go to the military? Oh, I can't do that. Well, why not? Well, I just can't. And they had no reason as to why they couldn't. But they had no direction. They didn't have any skills coming out of high school. And the best thing for them was military. Now, I would always tell people, if I was in charge of the country, one of the things I would do is when the graduate would walk across the stage, the school would give them a diploma, and I'd have the military right there waiting on them to give them some induction papers.
All right. See? Well, that would definitely get some of us, especially, I can think about when I graduated, some serious direction in our lives. Yeah.
Well, there used to be a time when they had the draft.
Right.
And, of course, I was caught up in the draft, but I'd already committed to the Navy because I was in Navy Reserve during high school. And then I took the test for the Air Force, and I passed that. And I still decided to go into the Navy. While I was in the Navy in Italy, the Army wanted me to come in to their communications as an officer. Well, I had took the test for chief and passed it with flying colors again. So I said, well, might as well stay in the Navy as a chief. But the problem was that I still didn't get it. And I decided that I didn't want to go into the Army anyway, even if I was going in as a captain. And which would, like I say, when you look at hindsight, it might have been a good idea. But like I say, I decided I wanted to finish my time in the Navy. I enjoyed it. And the highlight of the Navy was that, where you were born in Italy, and you got a chance to travel around Italy. You were born in Italy. You learned how to walk in Germany.
See, now, folks, I didn't even know this, so this is good stuff about me. Not about me, though. But yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, and then of course, your mother got a chance to travel a lot. She was in Italy, and we traveled over Italy down to the hill of Boot, Brindisi, And of course, when we were in the Philippines, she got a chance to travel. I played football. Well, her and another lady who were part of this massive cheerleading team. There was like 3 black women who had husbands playing football. Well, they were like you would think about 20 of them if you listened to the radio, the way they cheered for the football team. And they got a chance to travel football team where we would take a bus to go play the Air Force. They would fly on the Admiral's helicopter.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I want to fly too. They would be there shopping and spend all our money and wait on us to show up, which was great.
I think my mic kind of went out here, but we'll talk louder. Real fast, Phil, when it comes to regrets, everything, and sometimes in our life, like you said hindsight, but and you look at hindsight, any regrets or things you would have done differently. You mentioned a couple of things already, but overall, lessons that are learned looking back.
Well, I don't think I would do it different because of the simple fact that you can't never say if I had to do it all over again, I would do it different.
Sure.
Because you could not remember what you did. If you had to go back in time, I doubt seriously that you would remember all the mistakes that you made in the future. Yeah. So if I had to do it all over again, it would probably come out the same. Now, if I could remember all the mistakes that I made going for it, yeah, then I would do it different.
Good point. I'll keep that in mind. Well, this is great to hear, and time very well spent. And again, just want to say thank you for being a veteran for the country. Thank you for being example to young men. Thank you for being my dad. And I have learned a lot, so much more that I won't forget. And if someone asked me, hey, your dad is in the service, what can you tell us? So do you have, this amount of time and more? I'll be able to tell them all about you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it would take a lot more hours to go through everything that I did because I was always in communications. That I learned how to play volleyball. So I made all volleyball championship teams. When I got to Puerto Rico, they needed a pitcher. So they said, well, can you pitch? I said, well, I was a catcher. So I learned how to pitch, and I learned from the Air Force pitcher. They taught me stuff. The old Navy chief taught me how to say, no, you just throw the fastball. So he taught me how to throw the junk stuff that people wouldn't be able to hit. Played football, became an all-star football player. And I had one team trying to pick me up for the semi-pros, but I still had several years left. And at that time, they wasn't doing that stuff where they let you go play football and still be in the Navy. No, we're not doing that stuff. You're a communicator, you have a job to do. So I made all the all-star teams. We traveled all over the world, played football. Played football in Italy. I played football in the Philippines and Japan. Played basketball in all-star team. We traveled to Hawaii, traveled to Florida, and volleyball team overseas. We traveled back to the United States. Of course, we played Alameda, played in Texas, Norfolk, Virginia. We played in the Tidewater Valley Association. So it was quite an experience. I got a chance to climb the Eiffel Tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, Australia, Japan, China, Korea, Germany, Spain, Greece, all of those places that people only dream about.
Yeah, right here I do the same thing.
Well, those places that people dream about, I had a chance to visit at the expense of the government. Watched the changing of the guard. I got a chance to go to McDonald's in London.
I've seen pictures of London's McDonald's, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the first places we stopped there. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken in Portsmouth, England. I also went to Kentucky Fried Chicken in Japan. I went to McDonald's on the Ginza in Japan. So it was a very good experience.
And I can imagine, only imagine. But now that you've said these things, I'll take that example and follow in your footsteps and recommend that we all follow in the footsteps of those who are veterans. Well, Dad, thanks for your sitting down with me. I mean, you're my dad, so
Yeah,
this is easy, but still,
Yeah.
it's a long time coming. So
Well, yeah.
happy Veterans Day, and of course, thank you for what you've done in yesterday.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right. Nice, sir.
All right, let's go eat.
Is he still running? Because mine looks like it might.